Stalker 2 is a buggy, broken mess of a game. And it still runs better than Fallout 4. That's right, this is not a Stalker 2 review, nor is it a Stalker 2 opinion piece. This is a Fallout 4 hit piece. I'm only kind of kidding. After Fallout 4 burned me once in 2015 when I bought an Xbox One for the release of that game, only to give it one playthrough, I thought that I was done with first-person open worlds, but not long ago I wanted to try out Fallout 4 Survival because it was just calling my name. And I was actually having a blast with it on my Xbox Series S. I played about 10 hours of Fallout Survival, going super slowly and taking my time to get to Diamond City. But after about 8 hours of exploring and doing side work to get my character some experience, I got to Diamond City and the surrounding Boston area. And the game won't run. Bethesda doesn't seem to be taking any sort of responsibility for this either. Googling Fallout 4 next-gen console crash will bring up posts from as long as 8 months ago and as recent as 1 month ago. Fallout 4 Survival crashes at multiple places in the main story, Good Neighbor and Swan's Pond off the top of my head, and apparently whenever the game tries to autosave. The worst part is that in Survival, you can only save when you're resting, and you can only rest at beds that you own or rent, other than the autosaves that it will automatically do that crash your game. So exploring is basically just permadeath. All the time. And if it autosaves, go back again. So how disappointed was I when I decided to give Stalker 2 a go, only to find out that it was riddled with bugs, glitches, and broken systems? Well, not disappointed at all, actually. Fallout will crash indefinitely. It will never run. But in 65 hours of gameplay, Stalker 2 only crashed 5 times. What I'm trying to say is that Fallout throughout the years has disappointed me, but Stalker 2 is special. A little context, I'm a first-time Stalker, and I decided to pick up Stalker 2 on the Game Pass about a week after launch. Since then, I've completed Stalker 2, went out and bought the original trilogy, and have completed Stalker 1 and am playing through Clear Skies now. And I'm hooked. I haven't felt this hopelessly addicted since Elden Ring. I can't put these games down, and most importantly, it passes the ultimate trial of if a game is good or not. I can't stop thinking about them while I go to work. But for anyone who has never played a Stalker game, what are they all about? A quick and probably way oversimplified summary is it's about the Chernobyl exclusion zone and a multitude of factions that reside within it, including stalkers who come to the zone in search of artifacts that they can sell for a quick buck, or jobs where they can do the same. In the lore, a second disaster happened at the Chernobyl nuclear power plant in the year 2006, causing a bunch of strange occurrences to pop up in the form of what seem to be magical anomalies. Anomalies are hazards to the people of the zone, ripping humans apart, cutting them to shreds, electrifying them, or poisoning them if they dare get too close to the strange bubbles of energy that are dotted around the world. Artifacts are more or less everyday objects that have some sort of magical properties and can be attached to the belt of stalkers to gain a variety of positive and negative effects. Every faction that resides in the zone has differing ideas about what should be done with the zone, some wanting to research the happenings and try to leave the zone alone to the best of their ability. Others want to section off the zone and contain it so the anomalies and other odd string of events can't escape into the outside world. Stalker 2 follows the events of the original trilogy, so going into this one blind like I did might not make a whole lot of sense, but I am of the strong belief that you can go through this entire game without caring about the story and still enjoy yourself. But hopefully you will become invested in it and try to give the other games a try, because they are absolutely worth it. Now, I'll be honest, I died to the anomalies at the very start of the open world probably 5 times. I couldn't figure them out, but I eventually did, and now I'm a seasoned stalker myself. And I'm glad that tutorial was there personally, because I would have had a very rough time out in the open world if it wasn't there to help me get the bolt throw and run timing down. But that's the main reason Stalker 2 is so much fun to explore, because it's dangerous out there. For once in a video game, it's actually dangerous out there. I'll get to the actual map, but the survival elements in the zone really set it apart from dangers that other games present. I will say that every single survival element is not here, and I would have liked to see a little bit more. Maybe the ability to get cold, sick, or infected. But I understand that every survival element doesn't need to be here because it isn't strictly a survival game. However, if an update or a mod comes out that brings these into the game, I would be happy. The weight system is the first thing that I noticed was a little bit different. Skiff, our character we play as, can only carry about, it depends, kilograms total, and I believe that he becomes over-encumbered and has a harder time running after about, it depends, kilograms. Things in this game are actually things, real stuff with weight to them, so when you start adding food, medicine, ammo, and other loot, you quickly realize that you can't afford to carry a third gun and you might have to downsize. Or you have to make your way back to a base and sell or stow away some of the gear for a later time. Repairing gear is another element I want to talk about. It seems that they adjusted how expensive it was to repair gear fairly early on in Stalker 2's life, but since I started a week after release, I don't think I ever noticed, but repairing gear was incredibly expensive. Like, it was significantly cheaper to just buy completely new weapons over fixing the current ones. Repairing is still very expensive in Stalker 2, but it's more reasonable now, and I actually wouldn't have it any cheaper if it were me. See, I like collecting the unique variants of guns, and the non-unique variants I just would typically sell because I can always find more. But because of this, I had to continuously baby my guns and keep them in good condition, or I wouldn't have any guns to use. This was a choice that I made, and it was an expensive one. Desperation set in even harder though when I had to pick up an enemy gun that was broken while scrounging for ammo that I wasn't originally carrying. Food, water, sleep, bleeding wounds, and radiation are also survival elements that help add to the immersion that Stalker has proven so good at. I played through my first playthrough on Stalker difficulty, but the clips playing in the background were set to veteran, and I did notice that the higher difficulty required me to eat, drink, and sleep more often to keep Skiff in good health, unless I'm just imagining that, but I'm kind of torn between how often these things are actually necessary. I found myself only ever needing to sleep about twice in Stalker difficulty, that is, but I found myself needing to eat fairly often. One of the reasons why is because drinking energy drinks to restore stamina is quickly going to set your hunger meter to 0, and you will need to eat, which I found to actually be a great balance in the game. If I wanted to carry energy drinks so I can move around faster, I would also have to carry food and account for the weight of both items. I would also like to say that the variety of food in this game is severely lacking. I'm sure there will be mods that add more food into the game, and I know it was the same in the old games, but bread and sausage being the only fresh food here is a little bit immersion breaking in 2024. I don't think it would be very hard to reskin a piece of bread while having it work functionally the same, so I just wish they had more food available to eat other than canned meat and condensed milk. One thing I would also like to mention is that the economy seems to be a bit overinflated with stuff. I've heard people say that it's impossible to run out of heals or ammo, but they probably weren't playing on controller because I'm missing like 50% of my shots and I need that ammo. But food and heals are absolutely overspawned on dead bodies and stashes. I'm playing Clear Skies right now and my most recent save is me bleeding trying to find a fucking bandage, but in Stalker 2, this is almost never the case. I think with the artifacts being able to help heal some of the bleeding, and not that that's anything new, but bandages should probably be a little bit more sparse, and medkits should be as well. Later on, I do mention that I ran out of medkits during a boss fight, but that was a long dungeon crawl during the main story where I could easily run out of supplies and not be able to turn around very easily to go get more, so I just struggled through it. As for ammo, I don't find that there is so much of it because I already mentioned that I need it, and if you don't need it, there's no reason that you have to pick up 700 rounds and you can choose not to. And the weight system, without the artifacts that is, will also make sure that you're aware of how much ammo you're carrying. Lastly, for survival, what are we actually surviving here? Well, to be honest, the map is a little bit devoid of enemies right now. Compared to the size of the map, the amount of enemies you run into is quite low as of writing this, but as of recording this, the zone should be more lively due to A-Life finally working properly. But I kinda liked this before A-Life was working. The sort of dead zone, at least in my first playthrough, I enjoyed it. The zone isn't completely devoid of enemies, I mean, it's far from it. There are sections where you'll be running for a couple minutes without seeing anybody at all, but this is the zone. Like, the population here isn't exactly booming. While I do understand that A-Life is not working properly, and the game should most likely have more life walking around and doing things, I didn't really mind the broken AI in the zone all that much, to be honest. And you can absolutely burn me at the stake if you'd like. I'd also rather have A-Life functioning properly in this game, and I do know that enemies will spawn randomly 50 feet away. But I must not have had this happen nearly as badly as others. Early on, yeah, enemies did seem to spawn right behind me where I just was, but as time went on, at least it seemed to happen less. And I was able to forgive the bad spawns pretty easily because most of the time the enemies weren't spawning directly where I just was. Sometimes I'd be looting a location and enemies would spawn right outside of that location and start walking in and shooting me, and I could just write this off as being snuck up on. There are a lot of bushes and foliage, so as long as I didn't see the enemy spawn on my map or right in front of me, I kinda just roleplayed that the enemy was being stealthy. I couldn't suspend my disbelief every time, but I do think there's something to be said about how willing you are to immerse yourself. But, again, A-Life should be working, so there really isn't a need. The hostiles in this game are pretty widely varied, and it will vary further from person to person and playthrough to playthrough depending on what factions you side with. Either way, humans and monolith zombies will be shooting you, dogs will be running in circles that are impossible to follow on controller, pseudo-dogs will clone themselves way too fast for me to handle, the bloodsucker's name is a verb, so you can figure that one out. There's packs of rats that will make you cry, controllers that will make your ears cry, pseudo-dogs that will make your ass sweat, and more mutants that I'm leaving out but can't be easily forgotten. I like these mutants. They are bullet spongy compared to the easily disabled humans that can be killed with one bullet to the head, but I think they should be. Bloodsuckers were incredibly strong before the patch, but after the patch I think they died just a bit too quickly from shotguns, and you can even barrel stuff them with the semi-auto sniper to take them down quickly. I wish Bloodsuckers' damage was adjusted instead of their health, because they're really damn fast and hit really damn hard while also being really damn invisible, so I think the weaker attacks would balance their speed and stealth a little more than turning them into glass cannons. Although some mutants, as you could probably tell from the opening footage, are just too tanky. I was playing on Veteran, but having a single enemy eat so many bullets is just off-putting. I would rather have two slightly weaker enemies to deal with than one overpowered meat monster most of the time, or at least give the mutants a reason as to why they can take so many hits. I don't want to change the entire design of monsters that have been present in the game for almost 20 years, and I would never dare try. But if the mutants could die and come back to life or something like that, then the combat could be broken up more and make it feel less like the mutants are invincible. Maybe they're weaker overall because they roar or scream upon death, and the signs of distress attract other mutants to the area. Something to make combat less of a weird dance of running circles around the pseudo-giants I think could make the health pool that they seem to have more reasonable, which I would prefer over the monsters just being weaker at a base level. We're also surviving the zone itself. Anomalies that don't appear until it's too late, making you wonder if it's a bug or not. Anomalies that appear perfectly in time, but I don't see, making me wonder if I have a brain-eating bug. And just gravity. The zone doesn't want to kill you, but it really wants you to leave it alone. Now the map itself is just massive. The layout is not a perfect one-to-one of the real-life zone. The real zone has a lot more empty space than the actual map that we did get, but obviously that's a good thing as the zone is already very wide open in-game. However, my research shows that many locations are at least modeled accurately after their real-life counterparts, and there are plenty of side-by-side images that you can find showing the accuracy that they had while designing some of these locations. Overall, I think GSC did an amazing job capturing the vibe and atmosphere of the swamps and the forests, and if you told me that Stalker 2 was a complete accurate map, I would probably believe you because I'm very ignorant. The main thing that I felt when going back to the original Stalker trilogy was that the maps were still very good, very atmospheric and creepy, but I just can't replace the zone from Stalker 2. The old graphics and jank helped the old games feel uncanny and unsettling, but the fluidity and immersion that Stalker 2's map offers is just so hard to find in any other game. This isn't like Fallout, where you walk outside of a big city, walk for 5 minutes, and find another big city. Stalker 2 is not afraid and actually embraces the downtime that you get while in the zone. Fights might not break out on your journey across the map. People won't run up to you and try to talk to you in the middle of the woods because you're the main character and they're always beelining straight for you no matter where they are. And anomalies are just there. Not waiting for you, but just there. It's really enjoyable to see how Stalker 2's environment changed old abandoned locations into something dangerous and exciting to explore by the use of anomalies. Having to keep track of where the anomalies are, focusing your attention on the anomaly in front of you instead of the corner down the hall means that you might not see what is watching or if something's watching until it's too late. Having to look where you're going, throw a bolt, put away your weapon, all in a dark building puts you so on edge, and I just love every second of it. The open world really is doing a lot of the heavy lifting in this game. I enjoy slowly sneaking around the swamps, meadows, even the city of Pripyat. No open world has done such a believable impression on a game like Stalker 2 has. The use of the real-life location Chernobyl is also just straight up going to be more interesting than Boston, Las Vegas, or Washington, D.C. Because even though I haven't visited all of those locations, I know what awaits me in that city. A bunch of rubble and buildings that I can't enter. I already mentioned that the map is huge. There are 20 regions in Stalker 2, and many of them are just simply stunning. Not in a grand spectacle kind of way, it isn't like stepping out into Limgrave or anything, but it's stunning because this is mostly unmolested wilderness with man-made structures only sprinkled around here and there. I can't stress enough how well the zone works for a video game setting. It really makes the game feel unique that a good portion of the locations are open for you to explore, unlike Concord in Fallout 4 where most buildings are just boarded shut. The fact that Chernobyl is already a wasteland with a few open buildings here and there make the actual open world more full of nature, and the lack of many buildings also means that interiors can be more handcrafted. I don't think there's a single dungeon in Stalker 2 that is a copy and paste of one another. They all seem to be unique, and if having less interiors total means that we can explore all of them with no invisible walls or boarded doors, then I'll happily take the whole wide open zone over any major city that Fallout has to offer. Some of the locations that really stuck out to me are Garbage, a returning location from the original trilogy. But in Stalker 2, the hill is full of, well, garbage, but it just seems so more magical than ever before. The base was actually hard for me to find my way into because I had to run around the entire hill trying to find the entrance without getting irradiated to shit. It, like many other home bases, is also just very cozy and homey feeling to be able to chill at. The Duga is another location that blew me away. I was infinitely fascinated by the idea of getting to climb the Duga, but I think the most disappointing part of the entire game was that I wasn't able to free climb it, and instead I had to use it in accordance to the story. The visuals in the cutscene that take place at the Duga are also immaculate, but I really just wanted the satisfaction of climbing my way to the top all by myself and looking over the entire zone. I also really like the swamps. Traveling far from the lesser zone and into the southern tip of the swamps early on felt really dangerous and pretty scary. Tall reeds and slow waters will slow you down to a crawl and are hard to avoid at night, and traveling to or from the nearby base in Zayton, the S.T.A.L.K.E.R, while carrying too much weight will leave you in bed for an extra hour in the morning. The S.T.A.L.K.E.R is also my favorite base in the game. This place truly just feels like home. It's small, tight-knit, and the vibes are all just right. I love sitting at the bar and listening to the amazing soundtrack on the radio here. It's all just so good. The one location that I had the most issues with is probably the Circa base. You come here one time for a mission in the story and then never again. I wish that you could come here after the story tells you that it's okay, even though I do admit that I'm not entirely sure what you would do here. It isn't really needed for anything but the story, but I also didn't like to see a handcrafted location get used for so little. But these 20 regions combine into one absolutely monolithic map, and even though the map is so large, sprinting through it on foot really doesn't feel that bad. I never wished that there was a mount or a vehicle, and even though I did use the fast travel option quite frequently, the fast travel is done right. Dragon's Dogma 2 did this same thing, where you would pay a fee and have a guide you somewhere across the map, and in my opinion, I think this is always better than being able to fast travel from wherever you're standing. Also, the zone is interesting enough to where you most likely will get distracted by a building, artifact, a view, or a cave, and fast travel being the way it is doesn't mean that you're stuck traversing a boring world. One thing regarding immersion that I have to talk about is the sound design. The gunfire, footsteps, the Geiger counter annoying the piss out of me, the whooshing and whirling of anomalies, every sound in this game has space to breathe and do what it needs to do to build this environment. There are even these weird cat-like creatures that can mimic human speech and other environmental sounds, and I'm pretty sure they can throw their voice to make it sound like it's coming from somewhere else. They really wanted to make the sound in this game have weight, and I think they did a great job. Where they also did a great job is the music selection. The ambient tracks that haunt Skiff as he explores the zone are perfectly fitting and almost always make the scene. But the radio? Don't get me started. I'm pretty sure all of these songs are by Ukrainian artists, first of all, and second, the music is absolutely fucking banging. Go listen to Stalker 2 radio on YouTube, it is all good. There's a lot of punk there with some droning and monotone vocals that could not fit the vibe better. There's of course some Eastern European electronic dance music, and I do apologize for not knowing what the hell this is called. I wanted to call it Eurodance or Eurotech, but I don't listen to that kind of music, so I don't want to be wrong. Please do correct me in the comments. But that's not all. There's indie, opera. I can't find a good answer about how many songs are actually in the game, but the playlists are upwards of 400 songs. I really feel like the devs took any music that they liked, be it popular Ukrainian music or just a Ukrainian garage band that the devs might support locally, and just added it all to the game. Please do try to support some of these artists and give it a try, because if you're into music, you know how hard it actually is to find artists, and your favorite band might be on this list, and you may never know if you don't give music that isn't English a try. The gunplay in this game also far exceeds most open-world shooters. The guns are realistic, they break down and jam when they're in low condition, and I think the system of repairing weapons significantly helps using the variety of guns that they offer you. Too often in games, I see people using the best weapon they can find, only to say that the weapon variety sucks, and at first I also thought that the weapon variety was a little bit lacking in this game. But then I started breaking my weapons and being forced to use what I picked up and learning to use different guns and actually liking it. Add on gun customization as well as the ability to find rare blueprints that allow access to more gun mods, and what we're left with is completely satisfactory for me. There are enough guns to find one that you will never drop, while also not overloading you with weaponry. Artifact hunting is also an incredibly fun and somewhat relaxing activity that can coincide nicely between the main story missions and exploring. Artifacts are easier to find now than in the originals, at least for me, due to the more accurate scanners and less janky mechanics surrounding them. Finding these artifacts has been a great incentive to go out and explore the locations more, as well as playing more slowly and allowing myself some time to purely exist in the environments for longer. The artifacts themselves are also very useful and rewarding, either offering boosts to your stats like being able to carry more weight or protect from radiation, or just being high-value items that sell for some quick cash. And a lot of them seem to be designed around being somewhat useless, so you do have to go find these artifacts to make money, which, again, I think is great. While we're here talking about combat, let's talk about the boss fights. I'm disappointed in them. Boss fights are where my game struggled the most to run properly, and also it's such a big part of the story that was a letdown, but even that didn't seem to be the biggest problem. First, the design of the Faust fight just really kind of sucks. You have to fight through a lot of enemies at the Duga to get to Faust up on the roof, and then the way to kill Faust is by shooting the lamp that's attached to his belt. I hated this fight because I was nearly out of ammo, heals, and patience. Let me ask you, how do you hide from gunfire? You crouch behind a crate or something. Then you stand up to shoot, but your waist and your belt are still covered. So this, combined with a very small target on Faust's hip to aim for, makes for a very frustrating fight because he never comes out of cover and it's always behind a box, especially on controller where aiming is just that much harder. To avoid the clones and Faust himself, all while on low heals and ammo, I could only find one solution, which was equip my shotgun, turn the difficulty to rookie, and barrel stuff Faust's cock in my face while I was blasting the lamp 5 times until it was dead. On Stalker or Veteran, this tactic is just impossible with the stuff that I had. The boss fight with S.T.A.L.K.E.R was confusing. I knew how it worked, but it just felt janky as all fuck to actually lure S.T.A.L.K.E.R into traps and set them off at the right times. It isn't really hard, but the fight felt really kinda bad if I'm being honest. S.T.A.L.K.E.R feels less like an enemy and more like an oiled up soccer ball that I have to throw the goal at instead of kicking the ball into the goal. It's weird. I didn't really have any struggles with this fight, but it's very lackluster, annoying, and kinda disappointing. The best of the boss fights is S.T.A.L.K.E.R. I liked this boss fight a lot actually, even though it isn't perfect either. Like the other bosses, he is a bullet sponge, but with the added caveat that he can sprint around the arena at super speed. The arena luckily has a lot of places to hide, and the fight actually feels like a cool action sequence. S.T.A.L.K.E.R can also spawn electrical anomalies near you that section off parts of the map if you're camping for too long, which is a great way to keep the fight tense. Also, the music for this fight is fucking amazing. The issues I did have were that the first time I fought him, he sprinted away and just out of existence. I thought that I might have to follow him throughout the facility, so I tried finding ways forward, but he just despawned and I had to reset my save. When he finally did stay spawned, it was alright. Pretty fun fight, despite him being another bullet sponge with no explanation. At least for boss fights, I wish they would have had a reason as to why they can tank so many hits, like wearing something protective, or perhaps they're a seasoned stalker who can use medkits at the right times like us. That's what my headcanon is. Now, as for the story, I won't be talking too much about it because I have yet to fully understand it, and I only want one spoiler section on this video. From what I do know of the story though, it's actually pretty compelling, but the story doesn't seem to be the main reason why people are into Stalker. It's an element of why the game is loved, but it isn't the first or even the second reason that I kept booting up the game. That being said, for someone who was not into the games before Stalker 2, I thought the story that we did get in Stalker 2 was pretty solid. A good portion of the characters are actually memorable, especially Colonel Korshinov. I might be alone in this, but I think Korshinov might be one of the best looking video game characters I've ever seen. No, not like that. I just mean that his design is really quite believable. He looks like an old man, and not just any other old man in video games. He has a memorable face that shows toughness and grit. I also think that besides Skiff himself, Korshunov might have the best English voice acting in the game. Even though I didn't like the ward, I absolutely loved all the scenes with Korshunov, especially the one where he disassembles the AK and has you reassemble it to prove that you're not just some scrub, and that you know your way around a gun and the zone. That scene was straight out of a Tarantino movie and I loved it. Also, I have to mention Richter. Richter is such a nice guy, a real sweet dude. I was actually waiting for him to stab me in the back throughout the entire story because he almost seems too likable, but luckily he never did. Instead, when he helped me towards the end of the game, he and I had a real heart-to-heart, and it was a nice little chat. I really liked it. It felt good, and I felt like Richter actually mattered, not just in the story, but to me. The last character that I found as charming as Richter in a video game was Pavardi from The Outer Worlds, who was almost comically likable. I had an entire section on performance, but I decided that performance is going to vary too much from person to person, and the game is being updated so quickly for performance and crashing issues that it might not be present for much longer. The point is that I'm not excusing bugs, but I'm willing to deal with them because I was able to finish the game without ever losing enough progress to actually matter, so there were no game-breaking bugs, and I would rather play the buggy version than no version at all. Lastly, a major patch 1.1 just released today, Thursday, December 19th. GSC says that this patch fixes, wait for it, over 1,500 problems present in the game. Jesus Christ, I didn't even know there were that many. The first and main thing that is at the very top of the list is that A-Life should be working much more close to how it should have always been, and I've seen people comment that the game does feel better after this patch. I'm going to go bury my head into the game for another playthrough now that the patch is dropped, and I'll come back here to give my own thoughts on how different the game feels. Wow, okay. I put about 3 hours into the patch, and everything has changed for the better. It's not perfect, but damn is it different. It makes it feel like a lot of what I said in this video is now not really an issue and only applies to the first month of release, but that's obviously kind of a good thing. First off, yes, A-Life is working. I've already ran into multiple faction fights and one gunfight with a dog attack going on during it. I walked into a safe house area to see what was inside, came out 2 minutes later, and a gang of bandits was out there seething with hate for me. It hasn't been long, and I can already tell that there's a big difference in the world. I'm interested to see some of the later zones like the Red Forest, where I remember it being particularly empty. I also noticed that even on my shitbox Swearies S, the enemies are spawning much farther away, and they are visible from farther as well. I can now see a team of bandits at night from the distance because of their headlamps, and I can see individual people in bases as I approach them rather than once I'm already inside. The distances are further but not quite perfect every time, however, they seem to be a big improvement for nighttime stalking especially. I noticed that there's actually a cause of death on screen now, and that's pretty neat. They changed the fucking stash color to violet on the map to match the old games, and I didn't know that I wanted that so badly. And the load times are also much faster now, so it seems, and that was one thing that bugged me a lot on my Xbox. Finally reading through the patch notes, I see that they improved some facial animations and even some voiceovers for both languages in cutscenes, which seems pretty impressive to me. I don't know if that means that they re-recorded lines or what, but they seem like they're really trying to maintain the integrity of the game and the impact of the cutscenes. I can't cover everything here, but this patch is huge and fixes a lot of problems that I am certain will bring people back to the game if they were driven away at first. A-Life is working, and you will notice it, even if it isn't perfect yet. Performance should be better around the board, crashes will reduce, sketchy textures and pop-in should be less sketchy and pop-in-y. The experience has improved massively with this patch, and patch 1.12 already dropped the day after with more fixes. This game is starting to eat up a lot of space on my hard drive, but I'm okay with that because I'm not going to be playing anything else for a while. And this huge patch all came 1 month after release. Granted, that isn't immediately, but they were updating the game every day since launch for a while, and we already know that it would take months, and has taken months, for other companies to fix their games. But GSC fixed well over 1,000 bugs, something so trivial that no one would really care if they fixed them at all. Hell, there's a joke going around that they added a sound to a bolt hitting water because that was missing, and sure, it should have always made a sound, but I'm too busy shooting mutants to care. GSC is also releasing things faster than I can make this video because a 2025 roadmap just dropped as well that details their plans to continue to update not only the game, but patching the original trilogy next year as well. This dev team fucking cares, man. The content roadmap will drop at the start of 2025, and I'm almost sure there will be DLC in the game eventually, if not announced on the roadmap. There are areas that are fogged off just waiting to be utilized, and GSC, if by the grace of the Wish Granter you're watching this, I really hope you're planning either a winter DLC or adding seasons to the zone eventually. A stalker can dream. So that's what it's like for someone who was completely burned out from specifically Bethesda's first-person open worlds to play Stalker 2. It's everything I wanted from Fallout 4 Survival without the terrible writing and with much more atmospheric environments. Don't get me wrong, I don't hate Fallout. I just wanted to continue enjoying my time with Survival, but I couldn't, and now I no longer need to. It's like Overwatch being completely dominated by Marvel rivals. When a dev team neglects their game and their fans, the game and the dev team become unnecessary parts of the equation. Especially when a different team comes and puts out something that players actually want, unlike Starfield or paid mods for fuck's sake. For me, Fallout is that friend that you used to smoke and party with because he was the only one that was free on a Wednesday at 3 p.m., but that friend didn't mature with me. Fallout will be there at 3 p.m. on a Wednesday with a joint in hand ready to go, but it spent every day like that. It doesn't work, and it slept through Sunday morning when me and my new friend Stalker actually had time to hang out for some long sessions. I just wish Fallout finally grew up, but it didn't. Compare over 1,500 bug fixes in the first month of Stalker to Fallout 4, where it suddenly became unplayable after 10 years for almost a year straight, and it's obvious which game and dev company deserves the attention that they're getting. Not to mention, GSC is technically an indie game company, while Bethesda is a multi-billion-dollar corporation owned by Microsoft itself. After all that, I want to leave you with this. Stalker 2 is incredibly special. I haven't felt this way about a game since Elden Ring. Stalker 2 has done something for me that I have been looking for in first-person RPG games, and that is that it's fully immersed me in the world to a point of looking away from the screen actually feels foreign to me. The game makes me feel like a big old kid playing video games for the first time again. The horror elements made me actually scream at times. I had to pause so I could facepalm at how ridiculous I sounded to my roommates when I got jump scared by a dog. I also feel for this dev team. Watching the making of Stalker 2, the documentary, was an emotional experience. Hearing the stories of developers losing their lives in the war and seeing the credits roll by with the In Loving Memories section being over 100 names long is absolutely soul-crushing. GSC put their blood, sweat, and tears into this game so they could bring it to their fans here and now while they knew that they would be able to, because it wasn't certain that they would be able to. Stalker 2 is a buggy, broken mess of a release, but this gaming experience combined with the knowledge I've learned, the empathy that I've gained, and the entire story told to me, not just of Stalker, but of Ukraine and their lifelong struggles, is worth so much more than the measly $60 price tag that they're asking. If you're at all interested in the Stalker series, please support GSC Gaming World and buy all of them. You can get every title for well under $100, and it is one of the very rare game series that is worth every dime you spend. I know that I'll be playing the Stalker series for years to come, because I know I was missing out all this time. So with that, I only have one more thing for you. Good hunting, stalkers.